What's going on, guys? Welcome back to this week's third exclusive segment from the greatest podcast on turf. I'm Ryan.
And I'm Anthony.
And for this exclusive segment, we will be doing our fantasy football stardoms, situms. That's really enough said. Be sure to check out our other exclusive segments this week where we did our waiver wire pickups. That's a little bit too late, but if they're still out there, maybe check them out. Also, be sure to check out our best bets episode. Like I said, we were 7-1.
7-1.
6-1, 7-1, something like that last week. That's positive for sure. That's money in the bank right there for sure. So be sure to check that out. Also, be sure to check out our two podcasts this week, where the first one we did a recap of last week, and this one coming out today, where we did our continuation of me versus Anthony, who can predict the most games right. So far, I have the lead. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, you pretty much said it all. Great intro. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe if you're new. Be sure to check out all our other content, like Ryan said. You don't want to miss it. Like you said about the best bets, you would have won money. We did win money, as you saw in our thumbnail from our best bets video this week. Be sure to check that out if you haven't already. Don't forget to check out Little Italy. As you guys can see, we are back. Best cheesesteaks, best pizza in the state, I promise you. Can't go wrong for choosing Little Italy. 2 locations. My uncle has a shop. My dad has a shop. Link in the description below to their brand new website to check it out for the menu, for locations, for catering details. If you want to get a catering gig from us, or stop in, hang out with me. I'm here pretty much every day. Ryan's here a couple of days a week too. Hang out, eat some food. If you're of age, we can sit at the bar and you can have a drink while I make your food or while your food gets made, and we hang out. And with that being said, show us some love. You guys are killing it. And let's get into our stardom situms this week.
Before we get started, I had a couple of questions of stardom situms asked to me. The first one was Corey Davis or Terry McLaurin. This is coming off of a Corey Davis showed out week 1, Terry McLaurin didn't, and Fitzmagic's hurt with a turnaround week already on Thursday. So what are your thoughts?
My thoughts. All right, so Terry McLaurin, Thursday night matchup against the Giants. Got Corey Davis going into a home opener versus the division rival New England Patriots. This is a tough one for me, but honestly, I wouldn't look too much into it. We've seen what Terry McLaurin can do with quarterbacks, quarterbacks. We've seen what he's done with Dwayne Haskins, Kyle Allen, Alex Smith. I'm not reading too much into it. I'm starting Fitzpatrick. I'm starting Terry McLaurin. I mean, you can't go if you truly are worried about Terry McLaurin. Go ahead and start Corey Davis. You can't go wrong. He's on a hype train. I would be on the lookout for that Patriots secondary, though. The Giants defense did not look good against the Denver Broncos. They got kind of torched by Teddy Bridgewater and Tim Patrick and KJ Hamler. And Terry McLaurin is better than all the guys I just named. So I mean, personally, I'm going with Terry McLaurin. But if you're that worried about it, you can't go wrong with a Corey Davis if that's the other option.
I agree with Terry McLaurin. There's such things as getting too cute in fantasy football. Starting Corey Davis is getting too cute. Start the best player. If you're worried about Terry McLaurin, you shouldn't have drafted him because their quarterbacks suck no matter what in Washington. The next question that I got was WADDLE, DeVonta Parker, or Hollywood Brown. Pick one.
Talk about 3 ugly fantasy football names.
Yeah.
All right, so Hollywood Brown's got the Chiefs matchup. Chiefs probably going to be a shootout. Ravens offense put up a lot of points last week. How did Hollywood do last week against the Raiders?
He scored a touchdown.
Okay, and then you got the 2 Miami Dolphins guys. Tua was showing a lot of love last week to DeVonta Parker and Jalen Waddle. He was spreading the ball around a little bit. So the way I'm looking at this,
If you want, I can say my piece and then you can think about it.
Honestly, take a gamble, go Jalen Waddle. I don't like Hollywood Brown. DeVonta Parker's an ugly guy to start in fantasy. I'm between Jalen Waddle. It's probably, for my rankings, it's Waddle, Brown, Parker, but I'm going Waddle. Waddle's got upside. They're playing a Buffalo Bills defense. If I had to guess, it's going to be a low game, but they're going to be having to throw the ball because it's going to be a close battle. And what better to throw for the Dolphins and Tua to be throwing to than their explosive number 7 overall pick, best receiver in the class, Jalen Waddle.
I'm taking Waddle also. We saw Deontay Johnson score against the Bills. I could honestly see Jalen Waddle doing the same thing. Devontae Parker is the only guy on this list that I would absolutely not start.
Nope.
But yeah, I would go with Jalen Waddle personally.
And then we had a few submitted to our Instagram. First one, keep this one short and simple, asked Aaron Jones. You drafted Aaron Jones at the top of the first or the beginning of the second round, so you're starting Aaron Jones every week. That Packers game last week was a fluke. Like Ryan said, there's such thing as getting too cute. And not starting Aaron Jones would be overreacting. You're getting too cute. They got blown out by the Saints. They're obviously not throwing to the running back or handing the ball off. They're trying to throw the ball and score. And then this other one I actually do like because this arose in my head. Mike Evans. I'm starting Mike Evans this week 100% also against the Atlanta Falcons defense, who just got trashed by Jalen Reagor and Devontae Smith. Mike Evans is substantially better than both of those guys. So, I mean, Mike Evans, I'm starting him this week. I see how last week he only had 2 targets, whatever. Antonio Brown, Gronk, Chris Godwin all out targeted him, outshined him, whatever. But they're playing against the Falcons. AJ Terrell doesn't have anything on Mike Evans. He can't, never mind. He can't, can't say that. AJ Terrell don't have anything on Mike Evans. I think Tampa Bay is going to blow out Atlanta this week. If you want our full thoughts on that game, link below to the podcast. Be sure to check it out. But yeah, Mike Evans and Aaron Jones, you got to start both of them guys this week.
I agree 100%.
All right, so with that being said, that was all the submitted questions we got this week. Shall we get into our stardom sit-ems? Oh, yeah, you need those. All right, so for the first stardom this week we'll start with quarterbacks and work down the list like we did last time. My first stardom quarterback, Matthew Stafford. In Indianapolis, we saw what Matt Stafford did last week against the Bears. Torched them. He had the arm sleeve on. He's in the new offense. He was throwing the ball downfield. He was doing this thing, moving outside the pocket, throwing on the run. Matt Stafford looked as good as I've known he is. Against the Colts defense, who, to be quite frank, did not look that good last week. Granted, the Seattle Seahawks may have a higher powered offense, I guess you could say, than the Rams. But as good as the Rams looked last week, even running the ball, they did okay. Offensive line didn't look too bad. They minimalized Khalil Mack and Akeem Hicks. And, I mean, the Colts defense. The Colts are a very overrated team in general to me this year. So, I mean, Matt Stafford, you got to start Matt Stafford.
My first stardom quarterback is Jalen Hurts. I'm kind of rolling with the train. Week 1, I had Jalen Hurts. Week 2, I'm going to do the same thing. We saw the 49ers defense. I thought they were going to be better than what they just did against the Detroit Lions. Jared Goff had himself a field day with TJ
Hawkinson and Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Exactly. So I personally think Jalen Hurts is going to have himself a day against the 49ers. Jalen Hurts is a guy that you drafted really late because a lot of people slept on him. And he's also a very safe quarterback because he's able to run the ball. I see Jalen Hurts having no problems against his defense, getting you a solid 20 points. More weeks than not. So, yeah, I'm starting Jalen Hurts this week.
Not like that one, and that's a guy who I wasn't very high on, but you were extremely high on him for fantasy football this offseason. And he's an Oklahoma alumni. If you guys have listened to we're here when we were posting fantasy football content, predictions and mock drafts and stuff, you know Jalen Hurts is a guy who Ryan was very high on. And I did end up drafting him, and I benched him last week for Tannehill, and I got screwed. So I will not be making that same mistake this week. Although that is what I want to talk about. We talked about this question more on a podcast. Link in the description. Be sure to check it out. But on my second quarterback, it was a toss-up between both quarterbacks in this game. But I'm going with Justin Herbert this week. At home opener versus the Dallas Cowboys. I think this is going to be a shootout. I don't think a lot of teams in this league can hang with Dallas's offense when they're firing on all cylinders like we saw against Tampa Bay. Justin Herbert, he can throw the ball downfield. He is a quarterback that can play in a shootout, and I think this game will be a shootout. So if you have Justin Herbert, I don't care who your other quarterback is, unless it's like Tom Brady, an obvious guy, start him this week. It's a good matchup. Dallas just lost DeMarcus Lawrence as well, broke his foot in practice. That's a sign. Chargers offensive line looked very good against Washington. Chargers' whole offense looked good against Washington's defense. I know they only put up, 16, 17 points, whatever. They still look good. There were a lot of yards. Had some big plays in there. So, I mean, Justin Herbert's going to play against a defense that's a lot worse than Washington. So, Justin Herbert's a stardom this week, 100%.
Yeah, my other stardom quarterback, he actually mentioned it is Tom Brady himself. Tom Brady, he's not jumping off the page as a top 5 quarterback in fantasy football. He usually falls to that later 5 to 10 range, but him going against the Atlanta offense, who just allowed Jalen Hurts to absolutely torch him, you have to start Tom Brady this week. He's got Mike Evans, who didn't do much, I know, but he's still there. Chris Godwin, Antonio Brown, Rob Gronkowski. Looks like Tampa Bay's firing on all cylinders, and it looks like the Falcons suck really, really bad. Like, potentially worst team in the league, really, really bad. So, I could honestly see Tom Brady having himself a field day, a possibly QB1 type day, depending on what Pat Mahomes and Lamar Jackson do over there in
Monday night.
Kansas City or Baltimore.
It's in Baltimore.
Depending on what them boys do in Baltimore.
We'll have to see about that one. I like that one too. You know I'm starting Brady every week. I have him in a league. I'm starting him every week. Even on a bye week, I'm starting him. Enough said. All right, so and I only have one sit-em quarterback this week, and there's a lot of tough matchups this week. This is gonna be a good week for some football games. My only sit-em quarterback this week though was Kirk Cousins at Arizona. I think they're in Arizona. Yeah, they're in Arizona this week. We saw what Chandler Jones and the entire Cardinals defense just did to the Titans offense. Held them to 13 points. So, I mean, look for them to do similar this week. The Vikings offensive line was struggling against the Cincinnati Bengals, whose defensive line is a lot worse than the Arizona Cardinals. And, I mean, we touched on this on Monday's videos. The Cardinals defense just looked really good. Chandler Jones, J.J. Watt, Isaiah Simmons looked amazing. I've seen a video of Budda Baker pancaking Taylor Lewan. Enough said. So, I mean, the Vikings offensive line did not look good last week. The Vikings offense was very dormant last week. So, I mean, Kirk Cousins against this Cardinals defense, who looked very good last week. Keep him on the bench or don't even bother to pick him up and stream him this week.
And my sit-em quarterback this week is actually Derek Carr. A lot of people after the game of the Ravens-Raiders, they believe in the Raiders this year. They believe in Derek Carr and that offense just because of them scoring 30 or so points. I personally do not like Derek Carr.
I know. I do.
I think this first game was a fluke. I don't think the Ravens were right. They battled injuries. They're still trying to figure things out. And now Derek Carr is going up against the Steelers defense, who slowed down Josh Allen tremendously. And I think they're going to flat out dominate this Raiders team. I don't see Darren Waller having himself the day that he had against the Ravens. I also don't see Hunter Renfrow having himself the day that he had against the Ravens. So I think this game could possibly get ugly, and I believe that the Steelers will beat Derek Carr and definitely slow down this offense to where you don't want to start him.
Listen, you can attest to this. I'm a Derek Carr guy. But if you want my full thoughts on what I'm about to say about the Steelers and the Raiders, link in the description of the podcast. I promise you don't want to miss it. We went in depth on all these matchups, picked our winners for this week. Be sure to check it out. Ryan has a commanding lead over me this week in our pick'ems, so be sure to check that out. Link in the description of the podcast. Check out last week's episode if you haven't. Talked about it, you know, all that stuff. So with that being said, I'm not going to go into detail on Derek Carr. I'm going to move on to my stardom running backs. So a couple minutes ago, I destroyed the Indianapolis Colts, but my first stardom running back this week is Jonathan Taylor. Now, as good as the Rams offense looked, their defense looked good as well, but their run defense didn't look very good. David Montgomery had himself a day. He scored a touchdown. The Bears got going in the run game. They weren't running the ball as much as the game went on because they were down by 2-3 touchdowns. But when they were running the ball at the beginning of the game and even the start of the second half, David Montgomery was doing his thing, and the Bears' offensive line sucks. So, I mean, you got a guy, Jonathan Taylor, who is behind a better offensive line than David Montgomery has against the same Rams defense. That's got to be a start. And I know Jonathan Taylor's a guy, this could be getting too cute. Jonathan Taylor's a guy who you probably will start every week because how high you drafted him. But, I mean, he has a good matchup this week. That's the only reason I put him on this list.
My first stardom running back is Chase Edmonds going up against the Vikings. We saw what Joe Mixon just did against this Vikings defense. He had about 127 yards, a touchdown, a couple catches, a few yards. 127 yards, 30 receiving, give or take. So Chase Edmonds going against his Viking defense, I can expect kind of the same thing. I know James Conner is involved, but he's not very good.
Nope.
I mean, that's being
Starting to think I got
generous.
fleeced.
He had about 15 touches for 50 yards, I think. Chase Edmonds had himself a day. Now he's going up against his Vikings defense that, like I said, they didn't do great against Joe Mixon. Chase Edmonds is on a high-powered offense with the Cardinals. Kyler Murray is going to be the MVP this year. We've been saying that all offseason. The Cardinals are going to score a lot of points this year. It seems like their defense is going to show out this year. So I'm starting Chase Edmonds against his Vikings defense that didn't show up week 1. I see Chase Edmonds having a pretty good day.
It is a bad week to be a Vikings fan. With that being said, I'm going to move on to a guy who we both were not very high on going into the season. But, I mean, after last Sunday's game, kind of proved something. Got Melvin Gordon this week in Jacksonville versus the Jaguars. Listen, Denver, they ran the ball a lot last week. Javonte Williams got involved. Melvin Gordon got involved. I think he averaged 11 yards a carry.
He had one big run.
There was like 11 rushes for 110 yards, I think he averaged, with a touchdown or 2. It's a good day going against the Jacksonville Jaguars defense, who just got torched by Mark Ingram and David Johnson. So that's pretty much my thought. I mean, if Denver goes up early, or if this game if Denver gets ahead by a lot in this game, which could potentially happen, they'll start running the ball, and then it's going to fall to Melvin Gordon, a potential sleeper this week, maybe Javonte Williams. But I mean, I think Melvin Gordon is definitely a start this week, as much as I don't like the guy in fantasy.
For me, I don't like Melvin Gordon. He's not very good. Javonte Williams will take his job eventually, just not yet.
Tell me how you really feel.
I've been saying this since he was a Charger.
Fair
Other than that, my next stardom running back, this is getting too cute, but it is Najee Harris against the Raiders. A lot of people tend to overreact after week 1, and this is just a message to not do so. I know he played the Bills, and I know he only scored about 4 fantasy points, give or take, but he wasn't there for 100% of the snaps, and you can't say that about a lot of people. And you got Najee Harris going against his Raiders defense, who allowed touchdowns to Tyson Williams and Latavius Murray. Both of these running backs had decent days against his defense, and I honestly see Najee running through a wall. I don't see the Raiders slowing him down at all. I think Najee is going to have himself a game.
Yeah, and I agree with that. When you got a guy who played 100% of the snaps, start him in fantasy.
Yeah.
Word of the day. All right, moving on to my sit-em running backs. Got 2 guys who I was fairly high on. First guy is Mike Davis at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We saw them shut down Zeke. Granted, it was a shootout, but when Zeke was trying to get the ball going in the run game, Tampa wasn't having it. Vita Vea had himself one heck of a game. The Buccaneers defensive line did their thing still. And I think this is going to be a blowout, so I can't see the Falcons running the ball at all, maybe at the start. I mean, we saw last week, even against the Eagles when it got out of hand, Mike Davis had about 5-10 carries in the first few drives. Then the game got out of hand, and he wasn't seeing much field time to Cordero Patterson. So, I mean, in a game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, best team in football, it's kind of hard to start him, considering they do have the best rush defense in the NFL, and it's going to be a blowout. So, Mike Davis, sit him this week.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. Tampa Bay shuts down literally every running back they go up against. Even Christian McCaffrey doesn't have a good day against these guys. So, I'm sitting every single running back against Tampa Bay that's not that upper echelon tier 1 guy.
Yeah.
But with that being said, I'll go and jump to my first sit-em running back, and it is Josh Jacobs. I didn't like Josh Jacobs this whole entire offseason, and people think he's good after having 2 touchdowns against the Ravens, but he only had 40 yards. Kenyon Drake had better averages than Josh Jacobs did. Josh Jacobs battled injuries throughout the whole entire game. He looked like he could barely walk, and now he's going up against the Steelers defense that have one of the best front sevens in the NFL. I don't see Josh Jacobs having any success. He's a touchdown-dependent running back. That's the only thing he's really good for. I could honestly see Kenyon Drake being a 50-50 timeshare and just completely ruining all type of fantasy purposes in this backfield. Therefore, I would not be starting Josh Jacobs. I don't even have Josh Jacobs. But if I had him, I wouldn't start him against this Pittsburgh Steelers defense.
And this is why you listen to the greatest podcast on turf and watch us. We warned you guys about Josh Jacobs, so if you drafted him and you follow us, shame on you. Can't help you.
You should try to trade him after that lucky 2 touchdowns.
Yep.
Because he's not going to get 32 touchdowns this year.
No, he's not. And
Oh,
I'll put
34.
money on that. I'll
Yeah.
put money on that. All right, second sit-em running back this week. It's another easy one. Myles Gaskin for the Miami Dolphins. We pretty much, short and simple, we saw what the Bills defense did to Najee. Shut him down, held him to 4 fantasy points. Najee couldn't get going in the passing or the run game. Look for a similar outing for Myles Gaskin this week. I know this game is touted to be a defensive battle, but at the end of the day, if we saw Najee Harris not get going against them, what makes you think Myles Gaskin's going to get going? So, I mean, that's where my philosophy is at with it. That's how I feel about it. So, I'm not starting Myles Gaskin this week, even though I don't have him. But
Staying in that same game, I'm not starting Devin Singletary either. If you drafted him, sorry to hear that. With that being said, Devin Singletary going up against this Miami defense who, I don't know if you guys know this, but there's some studs on Miami. They're good at defense. That is what they do. This whole entire game in general, I would like to stay away from unless you have Josh Allen and Diggs. In that case, you have to start them. But this whole entire game, I don't want to start any guys in fantasy. I don't see either of these two teams scoring a lot of points. It's going to be a dogfight. But yeah, Devin Singletary against Miami, I don't like it. Matt Breida is probably a better running back than Devin Singletary. I'm not sure if Zach Moss is coming back. It's probably going to be an ugly committee in his backfield and something that I completely want to stay away from.
Yep.
That's really where I'm at with that one.
Moving on to our stardom sit-em wide receivers. This is the week of the rookie receivers. My first stardom wide receiver, Jamar Chase, traveling to Chicago, play against the Bears. The Bengals receiving corps, it's a tough call. I would debate it between Jamar Chase or T. Higgins or even Tyler Boyd. They all saw about 5-6 targets apiece, between 4 and 7 targets
Jamar
each.
Chase had the most.
Jamar Chase did have the most. I think he had 7 targets. But my whole thing with this is Jamar Chase is the guy who the Bengals are going to target for a big play. You got Tyler Boyd in the slot, T. Higgins on the other side, but if they need a big play, they're throwing to Jamar Chase. And we saw a lot of big plays given up by the Bears secondary last week to Cooper Kupp. Van Jefferson had 2 60-yard bombs thrown to him. Who's Van Jefferson? You got a guy like Jamar Chase who Joe Burrow loves and their relationship is good, who we just saw Jamar Chase absolutely embarrass Patrick Peterson. Jalen Johnson ain't holding Jamar Chase on anything. No one on the Bengals, no one on the Bears secondary is holding Jamar Chase to anything. So, I mean, sure, Jamar Chase, depending on how you look at it, depending on what Bengals receiver you had, I don't think you can go wrong with any of them. But if I had to pick one to start, it's Jamar Chase, his big playability, and them going against the Bears secondary this week, it's kind of hard to not start him.
That's fair. My first wide receiver stardom is DeOntay Dropson against the Raiders. Just like last year, Deontay Johnson, he led the team in targets. He did that again week 1 with 10 targets. In a PPR format, 10 targets is all that you can ask for. And now he's going up against this Raiders defense who just allowed 30 points to Lamar Jackson.
And Hollywood Brown.
Lamar Jackson and friends, because there's literally nobody on this offense anymore. Yeah, it's really that simple. Hollywood Brown got in the end zone. I think 100% Deontay Johnson can. I don't see this Raiders defense stopping Pittsburgh. I know Max Crosby looked like a freak of nature, but
He was in his bag.
Villanueva, I think, is just old.
Yeah,
and he's just getting up there and he's done.
Yeah.
But I think the Steelers rolled the Raiders week 1 or week 2. I don't see the Raiders messing around with them. I'm a hater of the Raiders. I'll own it. I'll own up to it. If they win, call me out. Go ahead, do whatever. But Deontay Dropson is a must start for me this week against this sorry Raiders team.
If the Raiders win, I will leak Ryan's number so you can all send him messages on how wrong he was.
Go ahead.
Moving on, week of the rookie wide receivers, second stardom receiver this week. There was 2 guys here for me. This first guy is not a rookie. Antonio Brown, just throwing him out there. Just want to throw it out there. He had a lot of targets last week and they're playing against the Falcons. Enough said. But now the second rookie receiver who I'm starting this week 100%, DeVonta Smith. Going up against a 49ers defense who just allowed a lot of points to Jared Goff and company. DeVonta Smith killed Atlanta's defense last week. He got in the end zone a couple times, had a lot of big catches, over 100 yards, I think. A lot of targets from Jalen Hurts. Seems like they're connection is growing really good. And they're playing against a 49ers secondary that consists of who? Exactly. DeVonta Smith, start him this week if you have him 100%. Yeah, enough said.
My next starter wide receiver is Cooper Kupp going against the Colts. We saw what Tyler Lockett just did against these guys. He absolutely torched them. Got you about 25 or so fantasy points, give or take.
Yeah, he did.
A couple touchdowns, just destroyed him. Cooper Kupp plays a similar position to Tyler Lockett, can play in the slot, can play outside. Cooper Kupp is this deep threat for the Rams. I know Van Jefferson's there, but Cooper Kupp also does the same thing. So yeah, I see Cooper Kupp scoring a couple touchdowns, probably 1 or 2 against this Colts defense. Matt Stafford, it looked like him and Cooper Kupp are boys. What do you have, like 10 targets, I think?
Yeah.
Him and Deontay Johnson, both of my guys got 10 targets. So go ahead and start Cooper Kupp pretty confidently against the Colts. I don't think the Colts are just going to wake up one morning and start playing defense. So, yeah, give me Cooper Kupp against the Colts, and I would feel pretty safe about it.
Moving on to my sit-em wide receivers. This first guy, Brandon Ayuk. Listen, Brandon Ayuk, he's getting sat until further notice, until I see him back in the starting lineup, which unfortunately does mean we're probably going to miss his breakout game from him being on the bench. But he is the receiver 3, and it seems like Kyle Shanahan is not very happy with him and how he's been dealing with this training camp. It seems like him having that hamstring injury toward the end of camp and the end of preseason kind of hurt his stock. They got Trent Sheffield, who took his spot pretty much, and Brandon Ayuk seems like hasn't been doing much to try and earn his spot back. So Brandon Ayuk is on the sit-em list every week until further notice. Yeah.
I'm not buying into that hype. Brandon Ayuk was just banged up. He'll be fine.
I may have said Brandon Cooks. I mean, if I did,
No, you said Brandon Ayuk. He's banged up. It's hamstring injuries. It's kind of what you should expect with a hamstring injury. Just be patient. Wait it out. Hopefully you didn't take Brandon Ayuk to be your wide receiver 1. I hope not. So just keep him on the bench and be patient. It's not a big deal. But my first set of wide receiver is Robbie Anderson against the Saints. It looks like the Saints are for real. I don't know if it's a joke or not. Who knows? I know Marshall Lattimore might not play. I know he's week to week. But the Saints still have a stud defense, it looks like. Robbie Anderson struggled last year against the Saints, only getting about 9 points a fantasy game against them. Now you got the Saints rolling in against against the Panthers, who have Sam Darnold at quarterback. They're going to have a field day against this guy. Sam Darnold sucks. He barely beat the Jets. Robbie Anderson is literally only a deep threat guy, it seems like.
Yeah.
I had a 57-yard touchdown and not much else. I don't think he's going to get that against the Saints. So with that being said, sit Robbie Anderson. I would even try to trade Robbie Anderson if I was you. Sell high on him.
Noted.
Yep.
All right, my final sit-em of this week, DJ CHARK going against the Denver Broncos. DJ CHARK had a solid game last week, had a couple big plays from Trevor Lawrence, led the team in targets, I'm pretty sure, but they're playing against the Broncos, no-fly zone 2.0 defense. He's going to be locked down this week. They got Kendall Fuller. They got Pat Surtain. They got Bryce Callahan. They did just lose Ronald Darby, but that's the reason why they drafted Pat Surtain, to make up if that guy got injured. So they're losing a cornerback 2 and getting a potential cornerback 1 of the future. DJ CHARK's going to be shut down this game. It's going to be tough to see what the Jags do on offense because how good the Broncos defense is. Von Miller looked good. The rest of the defense looked good. So DJ CHARK is definitely a sit-em this week.
My last sit-em this week is Kenny Golladay against Washington. We got a short turnaround. Kenny Golladay, I told you not to draft him. You shouldn't have drafted him if you did. Daniel Jones sucks. Kenny Golladay sucks. Basically, with that being said, you got a Washington defense that's top 5, top 10, and that's really not saying much. They're going to roll this Giants offense. I don't see either team scoring points. I have no idea what the score is. It's probably going to be like 6-9 or something.
I'll be so
Who knows who's going to win? I don't know. But I'm not starting Kenny Golladay. I'm probably not starting Saquon Barkley.
Oh.
And if Saquon Barkley don't play, I'm probably not starting Devontae Booker. The only guy that I don't have any of these players. So with that being
I already
said,
got Kareem Hunt in the flex for Saquon.
I don't have any of these players. So if you have them, good luck. Keep buying onto that hype, I guess. But yeah.
And I think that's going to wrap this one up. We are at about the 30-minute mark, so thank you guys for watching. Be sure to go ahead, Take our advice from all our fantasy football videos, from all our football videos. I promise you, we're not wrong. Our best bets last week, we did good. Our pick'ems didn't do that bad. Our stardom sit-ems didn't do that bad, except maybe some of our picks. I know James Robinson was talked about last week. Sorry. But yeah, with that being said, thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, keep showing us some love. We really appreciate it. You guys have been killing it. We love when you guys comment, reach out to us, ask us questions, just show us love. We truly appreciate it more than you guys know. And with that being said, link below to all of our other content. Good luck this weekend with all your bets in fantasy football.
See ya.
Peace.